We have been asked, my name is Randy, and this is the lovely McGann Layton, and we've been asked to share a little bit about our road to fostering and then to adoption. And I think we've always been a little hesitant to share this because we don't feel special, and we don't want to stand up here and let you think that we've done something special in this. We've felt a calling, and we've answered that. And so I'm just going to tell you briefly how we got to where we are, and then McGann's going to share some more. Honestly, I think it really started probably a little more than 20 years ago when we got engaged. We got engaged, and honestly, prior to getting engaged, we'd never even spoken about getting married and those kinds of things. So we actually went out to dinner that night, and we sat down, and we started talking about things that happen after you get married and just kind of feel each other out for where we were going with this. And so I said, well, how many children do you want? And she said 3, and I said 2, and she said 3, and I said 2, and so we agreed that we'd have 1, maybe, if it was to be that we would try 1 and then see what happened after that. And so moving on from there, we did have our first child after we were married a couple of years, and we were sitting around one night watching TV after we'd put our son to bed, and one of those, I don't even remember if it was 20/20 or 60 Minute, or somebody came on and they were telling the stories of all of the orphan children around the world. And by the end of that show, we looked at each other and we were both crying. And I think at that time we knew we needed to do something. And so we started praying. We started praying about what our role was in that. We knew that financially, international or maybe even local traditional adoption wasn't an option for us. And we just started praying about that. And through that, we learned about fostering and adopting. And so we thought, well, I don't know if that's for us or not. You know, that's still a pretty big deal. So we thought, well, we'll just go to the informational class and see what happens. So we did that, and we still weren't so sure, and so we prayed some more, and we thought, well, at least we can take the classes. There's like a 6 or 8 week class that you take, and I thought, well, we'll do that and see what goes from there. And so we did that, and we prayed some more, and we weren't really sure. And so then we thought, well, let's go ahead and get the license. And so we got the license, and we still weren't really sure. And we're still praying a lot. And finally, we looked at each other. It's like, well, let's just take 1 child. We'll go with 1 and see what happens. They told us that if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And so we did that. And my goodness, it's been a blessing. That person came into our lives, and we had a lot of reservations about that, and I think McGann's going to share some of the reservations that we had about bringing an unknown entity into our house with our other children and all of those issues, but it's really been a blessing. And, you know, has it been all rainbows and unicorns? You know, absolutely not. I mean, our biological children give us problems. We give each other problems. I'm a big problem around the house, I know. And so I don't think we can go into it with the expectation that it's just all going to be flowers and roses and butterflies. But the things that it has taught us about unconditional love, about forgiveness, about grace, I think has just really been priceless in our relationship together and our relationship, and just the amazing effect it's had on our other two boys to see what giving on the front lines is all about. And I think I would reiterate what Jim said about the fact that there's, you know, not everyone is called to this. Not everyone is called to fostering or adopting. And that first child that came into our life stayed in our lives for his whole fostering, and then he came up for adoption, and he's been adopted by us, and that was 11 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago, and it's really been a decision we've never regretted. But we know that it's not for everyone, but there is, I think, a place for everyone to be able to help with prayer, with meals, with support, with respite, and things of those nature. So I need to give it off to McGann so she can tell you the good stuff.
Thank you. Like he said, I hope you heard, it wasn't just one day we decided, hey, let's provide foster care and adopt. It was a process that God led us through. And we had reservations, objections, barriers, whatever you want to call it, that I'm sure each of you is thinking about right now. And I'll share just a few of them that we had. The first one being, just the cost of it, both financial cost and I'll call it comfort cost. Financially, we looked into it and we found the state provides us stipend for each child. It provides a little clothing allowance and a Medicaid card. And so they make it so it's not an overwhelming burden to do this financially. So that issue went away. The bigger issue is probably the comfort cost. We had a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, so we're out of the diaper and toddler phase where you got to watch them every minute. And the thought of kind of going back into that, was not very comfortable. And I know all of you here are in different levels of comfort, and the thought of either bringing children in where your children are grown and gone now is not a comfortable thought, or if you don't have children yet, bringing a child in is not a comfortable thought. There is nothing comfortable about any of this, but it doesn't mean that we don't do it. And for us, the call to do it was greater than the cost that we were looking at. Another objection or reservation that we had was what Randy mentioned about the impact on our 2 boys. And that was probably the biggest concern that we had, or fear, if you want to call it that. When you don't know who you're bringing in and their background and what impact they're going to have on your children, it's kind of scary. But we prayed through it. And as God will do, he turned that biggest barrier into the biggest blessing for us, because our boys got to see every day God's love, his unconditional love, because our love is not enough to do this. But they got to see every day God's unconditional love and his provision, and they got to see our dependence on God every day through this whole process, because it is a roller coaster throughout all this. But they got to see that. And through that, over these past few years, they have now grown into these godly young men who are compassionate and loving and kind, and it's going to choke me up. But they see others' needs and they care. And if we had decided this is too scary, we're not going to do it, we would have missed out on that blessing in our other 2 boys. And then the third thing that I'll bring up is the one that everybody brings up. Well, how can you bring somebody into your home and love them with everything that you have, and knowing that they're probably going to leave and go back to their family? And that's a valid concern. The whole point of the foster care system is to remove the children for a brief time so that the family can get the support they need and then reunite the children with the family. So it's highly likely that the children will leave. And I remember asking Stephanie Stinson about this when we were looking into this, and they were ahead of us in this whole process. And I asked her that, well, how do we do that? And she told me, God has called us to provide a safe haven for these children, whether that's for a week or months or years or forever, and that's what we'll do. And is it going to be hard? Probably, but that's what God has called us to do. And so we said yes to doing that. And for us, I can't speak to that fully because ours never left. He's stayed on with us. But there was a roller coaster there briefly when they asked us to adopt, and then they changed their mind. And then they asked us to adopt later. So there was a kind of a shifting of gears that we had to go through. So we know that feeling. But still, this is all God's, and he knows exactly what the plan is and how it's supposed to go. So we trust him with it. It all goes back to total dependence upon God in all this. So I hope that you're not hearing that every single one of you is supposed to provide foster care or adoption, because there are some in here that should not do it. You know who you are. It wouldn't be good for the children. So we're not saying that, but we are saying everyone is called to care about these children, and in more than just a superficial way. And so we're going to watch a video here that will introduce to you some ideas of how you can get involved. And we had some support along the way. I talked to Stephanie several times through this. Carlene Martin was a a godsend for us as we talked with her. But there's other ways. There's meals and babysitting would be huge. So watch this video and learn more about it.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia Lewis, and friendly people are waving to me. Normally, on any given Sunday after the 8 a.m. service, I can be found on the second floor serving with amazing Sunday school leaders, worship leaders, storytellers, and inviting first through fifth graders into God's big story. And God's call is his story. It deserves to be told only because it is his and only to bring glory to him alone. Our prayer today is that you will hear threads of his character, his love, his grace, his provision, his power, and his great plan to reconcile and redeem a broken world to himself. In the amount of time that we have, it's going to be impossible to share all the details of his call for us to adopt through foster care. But we pray that what we share will give you a picture of how God is using every person's life to accomplish his purposes. So God calls us. I don't know about you when you read the Bible. For me, when I read the Bible, things like Genesis 12 and the call of Abraham by God to go. And Abraham just went. And I think, how could he do that? And I wonder what God had been up to in Abraham's life up to that point. And I wonder, what had Abraham been doing to cultivate such a trust in the promises of God, to overcome his fears, to be free, to go wherever God called? But I know that I want that faith. I want to believe in the promises of God and be free to be used by him however he chooses. So for Adrian and I, God's word has been key in guiding and confirming this call every step of the way. Throughout the years of 2007 and 2008, he birthed in us a desire to care for orphan children in a God-sized way. Not really understanding fully what that would look like, we moved forward in faith, mainly through getting involved in volunteer efforts with the Global Orphan Project, eventually Adrian joining them on staff. But by the fall of 2008, God brought a family in need into our lives, a set of grandparents in Colonial who had taken guardianship of two of their grandchildren. And without really thinking about it, we began doing life with them, helping them with the kids, carpooling, tutoring, hanging out. God was beginning to give us his heart for his hurting children. We found ourselves praying about whether we should be an adoptive resource to these children should that need arise. Can you see the grace of God in leading us gently into this call? Our hearts were beginning to be burdened. Are there more children like this, Lord, right here? Yes. And within a couple of years, while Adrian was on a trip to Uganda, he wrote to me saying that God was calling us to become licensed foster parents. I was afraid. What would this mean? And yet I knew it was the next step. And after some hesitation, we moved forward. During a session in our foster care training aimed at helping foster parents understand the great losses that foster children endure, we were asked to tear up a piece of paper into 5 small sheets. And on these 5 small sheets, we were asked to write down the 5 most important things or people groups, family, friends. You couldn't list individuals. That would be kind of hard. And so my church was on one of those, my family, my friends. And one by one, in a means to help us understand that the losses these children experience, we were asked to give up each of those things that were so important to us. We got to the last sheet, and the instructor said, and now it's time for you to give up the last one. And I held up my sheet of paper, which has the name of Jesus on it. And with tears streaming down my face, I said, "This one will not let me go." And I was convicted and convinced that God was calling us to bring Jesus into the foster care system, that the hope of one that would not let them go needed to be shared with these children. And so we moved forward, and we began to pray as to whether God wanted us to foster, adopt, or both. And through different circumstances, in the same week, God brought unity to our hearts that we were to adopt through this system to give a child a forever home. So in April of 2012, we were licensed to begin foster care. And on Friday, May 11th, 2012, we received a call requesting placement for 2 toddler boys. If any of you were here last week and you saw a video at the beginning of the service where a little girl was in an office and a caseworker was making calls trying to find placement for her and wondered if that was real, it is. These 2 little boys had been removed from a grandmother's home about 10 a.m. that morning, and I was talking to a caseworker at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they still hadn't been placed. They had been in that office all day long, and in fact were sleeping on the floor when I was talking to her. God was gracious to have Adrian and I in the same place that day at a training at the Global Orphan Project. And so as I got the details from her, I told her I would talk to my husband and call her back. I shared everything with Adrian. It was so overwhelming. All I could think to do was to say, cry out, "God, what do you want us to do?" And as clear as you are hearing my words, the words of Matthew 25 were spoken into my mind. "When did I see you, Lord, a stranger, and welcome you? When did I see you?" And tears were streaming down my face, and Adrian said, "What did you hear?" And I told him, and he began to cry and shared that in the Bible study he had been in that morning, they discussed Hebrews 4:7. "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts." We were called by God, and by 6 p.m. that evening, 2 precious toddler boys came into our lives for the first night of a 7-month stay.
Go ahead and put the picture of the boys up there. Cynthia told you that it was May 11th, 2012. It's no coincidence that it's 2 years later to the day that we're having a conversation about these boys. And I would be lying to you if I said that we didn't expect to have them with us on this day. We did. We fully expected. In fact, the day they came to our home, we had been told, and it was true in the moment, that they had nowhere else to go. Parental rights were terminated, and this was it. And we were going to be their family. And so it would be just like adopting a child from wherever in the world, and they show up. And then at some point later, we're told that they're going to go. And they left 7 months later. And that was hard. I would be lying to you to tell you that it was not brutal. It's a difficult thing to love and to let go, and it was hard. But I can tell you how awesome God is in the process. The day I went to court to hear from the judge that the boys were leaving, I went out afterwards, and my heart was heavy, and I was sitting down in the lobby, and I just was talking to the Lord, and I was just saying, "Okay, God, I'm okay. Like, I get it. You're in control. I get it that the kids need to go. I get it. But just show me what happens. Like, give me a vision for their life that I can rest in, that I can feel peace about." And the Lord, in his amazing way, just like with Cynthia, spoke into my mind. Am I not enough? Adrian, is Jesus not enough? The most loving rebuke I have ever had in my life. And only a father who loves you fully and completely can speak those kinds of words, and then that makes you okay. Because the truth is, I'm not in control of anything. And neither are you. We're not. We just need to be obedient. And Jesus is the one who is got to be enough in anything that he asks us to do. And so the boys left, and 10 weeks goes by, and we get another phone call. And they say there's 2 girls, and they need a home. And so we talked, and we said yes. So these 2 sweet little girls, go ahead and show the picture, Ashley and Brittany. Some of you know them because they've been coming to church here. They've been with us for over a year now. And God has shown us some amazing things as we've loved on these girls. He has done a work in us. He has been transforming us. And he continues to remind us that we are not in control. In fact, the 2 girls are leaving in 2 weeks, May 23rd. And even though that's a sad and hard thing and our hearts are tremendously burdened, it is also an answer to prayer, because as we've prayed about, Lord, where are they going to go? What is best for them? He has given us peace about where they're going, and that is awesome. He has been showing us over and over his hand in this whole process. And he's also showing us our sin. He's also showing us through the process of trying to love on these kids just how selfish we are. And that's hard. It's hard for me to say, and it's hard for you to hear, but that's what a loving father does. He shows us our sin so that he can move us to where he wants us to be. He can transform us. And if you hear, I want you to hear, amongst everything else you're hearing, that God intends to transform you. And he does it through hard things that he asks you to do. And this is a hard thing he's asked us to do, and we are so grateful that he's transforming us and making us dependent on him.
There is a pastor who works with the Global Orphan Project, mobilizing churches to enter into foster care and adoption. He's in the state of Texas, and I heard his wife, they themselves, after raising 6 biological children, began to foster and adopt. And she said, I had the heart of a mother, that nurturing mother's heart. But what God taught me in this process was that he wanted me to have the heart of my father. And that really requires dependence on him, even as he is refining us through revealing our own selfishness and sin and desire to protect ourselves. We have some options to deny and run and hide, or to go into despair, but God wants us to fall at the feet of Jesus in dependence upon him, seeking forgiveness, reconciliation, and renewal, and healing, and power to move on. Songs oftentimes speak words that my heart just, I don't know what it is, but there's a song by Sarah Groves called The Long Defeat. And some of the words out of the chorus say, I pray for an idea in a way I cannot see. It's too heavy to carry, yet impossible to leave. And that is how I feel about this. My flesh would run, but I am compelled by the love of Jesus, who will not let me go, to move forward in a way that I cannot see, trusting that his plans and purposes are good. Many times I hear people say, what you're doing is so good, I could never do that. And the truth is, we can't do it on our own. We have to depend moment by moment on God for his help. The barriers to stepping into adoption or foster care are similar to barriers to taking any other risks. There's lack of knowledge. There's a fear of being out of control, the fear of failure. How will our other children be impacted? What if my love is just not enough? And it's not. I mean, that's what we need to understand. Only God's love changes our hearts, their hearts. On days when I'm striving in myself, it's my own desire for the easy road that has gotten in the way. It's my desire for what I want and my agenda, instead of stopping for the hurting one at my kitchen table. But as God, through his Holy Spirit, gives me more of his heart, he enables me to have a greater capacity to love like he does and be made willing to give up my way for his and be an ambassador of reconciliation and a conduit for his love and healing for these hurting children. The good news is that God does not call us to do this alone, and the role of support people in your life is critical for whatever our calling is. He provides community and support to encourage us as we step forward to answer his call. And for us, 6 months prior to us stepping into foster care, God put a burden on my heart to start a prayer group. I didn't know why, and I really wanted to ignore it, and yet he would just not let it go. And so even though it felt awkward to begin this, and I'm not really sure why, but I just know we're supposed to come together and pray and love, 6 other families joined us. It was these families. They showed up with diapers and toddler toys and toddler clothes and meals and prayers and friendship and support. Adrian's mom and our oldest son were there to give us much needed breaks or a trip for me to the grocery store alone. And as a mom with kids, especially young kids, you can appreciate how meaningful that trip could be alone. I have a supportive boss here at Colonial and people I work with when my just hours needed to change for a season as we work things out. We could not have done this without all of them, and many of them are in this church, and I just want to say thank you.
There are many other families in this church who have already are in the process of fostering and adopting, who are already, like Cynthia said, wrapping around families who are. And because we know that, the church has decided to form, we've been called to form a ministry, the Foster Adopt Ministry, because we want to come around families who are already doing this. But we also know there are many, many more children, many, many more children who God is calling us to take in. And so our hope, as you've heard our testimony, is that you would begin to pray, even right in this moment. What is God asking you to do? What is your part in this? We're going to watch a video that kind of shows you some ideas of what it looks like, the whole spectrum of what it looks like to love on children and the families who love on those children. So watch this, please.
Times when life is tough, when the best you got is not enough, and the hill is steep and the summit high, you wonder why. You've lost your spark, your fight, your song. Now wrong seems right, and right seems wrong. Look around and see the face of family, and lean into the love. Lift each other up, cheer each other on. We do it all because that's what family does. The table's set and the food is hot, reminding you what you forgot. A warmth of home and a fragrant grace, a holy place. And all of us can hardly wait to hold you close and celebrate. Look around and see the face of family, and lean into the love. Lift each other up, cheer each other on. We do it all because that's what family does. each other on. We do it all because that's what family does.
Good morning. Well, as we saw so vividly and tangibly in that video, there are so many different ways to engage. Almost so many different ways that it can start to feel a little bit overwhelming about how exactly you can take that next step. I loved hearing about Randy and McGann continuing to take next step after next step and see how you can contribute. So that's what we're going to take a few minutes to do right now, to share some of the ways that our team is thinking about how we as a church can wrap around these families and support these families. So when we jumped in, we started looking at all these opportunities and tried to say, how can we make a system of this? And we realized that a lot of these decisions come down to two different decision points. The first that you've heard so much about from Pastor Jim and McGann and Randy is whether or not you feel like you want to actually provide a home to these children, or whether you really feel like right now you have an opportunity to provide support wrapping around. So you make that decision. And actually, if you could turn, we have a great graphic that we'll start to walk through with us. Yes. So you can see those along the left side. And then within each of those areas, you have another decision. You can say, where do I feel like I am in terms of the level of commitment that I want to make right now? And you can choose to either make a longer term or more ongoing commitment, or you can choose to make kind of a one-off as needed commitment. And Jeremy will walk us through exactly what some of those things start to look like.
So thinking about the two decisions that Tracy just mentioned, we're really talking about 4 different ways that each person can engage. And we're going to, we think of them as 4 rooms in a house. And we're going to go through each of those 4 rooms right now. So be thinking as we're talking about kind of which room you feel most comfortable in. But so starting in the lower left-hand corner, the first room is the most traditional part of this ministry and really the crux of the ministry, which is providing a home on an ongoing basis. And you heard, the first option there is foster care, and you heard the story from the Laytons, which was inspirational, by the way. Thanks, you guys, for sharing that. And a child enters the foster care system really when they've, for whatever reason, been separated from their family. In some cases, it's something's happened that's not been expected, and the family can't support their children for whatever reason. But most of the time, this is because of neglect or abuse of some type. So these children have already faced incredible trauma at a very young age. Foster parents provide a safe and loving home for on a temporary basis, while the state is helping that family to get the support they need to get back on track with the ultimate goal of reunification. Of course, as you heard from the Laytons, in a minority of cases, it doesn't work out that a child or set of siblings can be reunited with their parents, their biological parents, or another member of their extended family. So there are some opportunities to adopt in that case. Actually, right now, in the metro area, there are 70 plus children in our area, in our city, who don't have parents, who have been through the foster system, and they are in search of a forever family, a place to call home. And we've gone around very sneaky about this. We went around and put some baseball cards. We call them baseball cards, but they're really prayer cards. And if you look in front of you, you'll find them. If you can just hold it up real quick, just so we know that you found them, because we were worried we were going to stuff them all in there and then no one was going to get them. But just grab these. So this is for you, just one per family. But I'm holding Taya in my hand, and Taya's a 14-year-old girl. But the purpose of this, and you'll see some pictures later of some of the other children in the system, but the purpose of this is just a reminder to pray for these children to find a forever home. So just keep that in mind. But the other option is adoption. So adoption has a little bit of a different purpose than foster care. Adoption, the focus is really to bring a child into your home as a permanent, with the intention of it being a permanent home from the very get-go. And there are many different ways to adopt. We talked about the foster system and foster adopt, but there's also international adoption, domestic adoption. And if you if you attend the orientation class, you'll get all of the information on that. So we'll, similar to the Layton story, we want to help you if you feel the tug on your heart to consider adoption or fostering, we want to give you that step-by-step, help you along the way. It's not something where if you show up to one meeting, you're going to go home with a kid in your car. We're going to give you time. It'll be months and maybe longer to consider this and take it one step at a time. So the next phase, or the next room is, we didn't know this when we got involved about a year ago in helping to plan this ministry, but there are also opportunities to provide a home on a temporary basis. And there are two options there, and I'll explain those real quick. So emergency foster care happens this is less than 72-hour commitment. It happens in the first 72 hours, first 3 days when a child comes into the foster system, and you can imagine this is a traumatic time. This child's just been removed from their home. And by providing a home for 3 days, you are giving the system, you're giving the social worker time to find the right home for that child. And in many cases, what this actually helps with is for siblings to be able to find a home where they can stay together in a home. Because if they're in a rush and they don't have time and they need to get the kids into homes, 2 or 3 or more siblings might get split into a number of different homes that can all accept one child each. So you're providing love, support, stability for a short period of time while they can find the right longer-term foster situation for those kids. So and actually the Department of Children and Families has told us that this is a huge way that they would love to see the church step in and help. And the other is respite, and you saw a slide on this in the video, is respite care is overnight, out-of-home care for kids, temporary basis, just for a few days, to provide respite for a family in this church who's taken on that longer term commitment of doing foster care, and they just need a break, or maybe they have a funeral out of state and they have not gotten permission to take that child out of state, or they have a graduation or whatever. There are a number of different situations where respite is really a critical way to support the families that have taken on this longer term commitment. So as you can see, and that's just kind of a transition into the second part. Support is very critical, as well as providing a home.
Yeah, so now we'll look at the next floor of this house, which is providing support. And we'll start with the ongoing dimension. We hadn't even necessarily thought of the distinction of support between ongoing and as needed. But as we met with really what is a legacy of families in this church who have fostered or adopted, the single biggest message that we got was the value of a consistent and small core of people who can come alongside them, both so that the family doesn't feel like they're kind of stringing out a lot of people, and so that the child, as much as they have visibility to these people, isn't just seeing a constant rotating door of folks. So we're really excited to be launching what we're calling wrap groups, which is basically that, 4 to 6 families that are going to come and wrap around a family that's either providing foster care or is in their first year of receiving an adoptive child, and provide them with practical supports. WRAP is an acronym that stands for some of the things that these folks will provide. W is for words of encouragement, R is for respite or babysitting, A is for acts of service, which we just can't underscore how helpful it is. It's things like rides. A lot of these children have a lot of different appointments. Rides, meals, all sorts of different things. And then P is for prayer. We would really ask for you to come alongside that family and really just continue and regularly care for them and pray for them as they go through this process. So when we think about wrap groups, we are looking for families to join along. And I will say that there are some families in our midst who recently became foster families who just can't wait. They are praying that there will be families who sign up and say, hey, I'm willing to do this, because they are so eager to get some of this extra lift. And so what it is it's 4 to 6 families. You'll probably help support that family about once a month, maybe for about 6 months, and we'll reevaluate at that point in time. And then we also have a need for coordinators, someone who just has the gift of kind of administration and helping to touch base with folks to make sure the family's getting what they're needing, that the families who are providing the support are feeling like this is working with what their passions are, and all of these different things. And I'll take a moment to call out right now that what we're talking through right now is listed in a flyer that's in the pews in front of you, not in the same place as the baseball cards, so look somewhere else. But we're talking through the graphic that is in here, and we'll talk more about some of the opportunities you have to specifically respond in this card. The next type of support that you can have is our final room, which is as-needed support. So while the consistent support is what we're really going to be driving in most cases around these families, we don't know what to expect. And we know that some of you might not be ready yet to kind of partner alongside. But we've heard so many stories, as you saw in the video, about things like this child is having such a hard time, they're feeling so much hurt, but they love music. And so if someone comes in and helps give them piano lessons, all of a sudden they start connecting more. So what we would love is for you to just jot down any specific passions that you have. There's a little green box here on the right side of the card. We've listed some ideas, but there's also a big area for other things that you think that you could give to help. We'll take all those ideas, and if and when there's an opportunity, we would love and be so grateful to be able to call you up and have you provide that. The other type of as-needed support is general assistance to the ministry. We'll be having a lot of trainings or other events where we could use childcare help or snacks or all sorts of different things. You can see some things listed there, and so we would welcome you to help there if you're interested as well.
And just wrapping up the house, or a couple other elements of the house, as you all know. I hope all of your houses have foundations and roofs, but this house has a foundation and roof as well. So the foundation is just, and next, if we could flip it, there you go. So the foundation here is just, there are other people who are not necessarily going to be hosting a child or directly supporting those who are hosting a child. We also have a number of other things that need to happen. So there are support systems, training. We'll be providing training for those who are going through any part of this process that we've described, as well as administration of just keeping the ministry moving and at that high level, just keeping the overall effort organized, as well as partnerships. We're already starting to partner with some other area churches who also have foster adopt ministries. So it's exciting to see how the Lord's really at work citywide and working at different churches and bringing those churches together to tackle this together. And in addition, there's a roof up there, and we thought about what the roof really symbolized. We thought prayer was most appropriate, thinking about the families who are going to be depending so much on God through this and praying, as well as the RAP groups, as well as the church as a whole.
As well as the administrative team.
But, there will be storms. This is a challenging issue. There will be storms, hail, rain, snow that falls on this ministry, and having that solid roof and praying for God to truly be a shelter to the ministry as well as the children that we're bringing in is what we hope to see. And I know that we've really been inspired. As we were handing out these cards, putting them out into the pews this morning, I was struck by Taya's picture and just thinking about the fact that every one of these kids is really made in the image of God. It says in Genesis that we're all made in the image of God, and just thinking that an image bearer of God is out there without parents, and without a family. And it's just an incredible opportunity to draw them in, and considering how we ourselves were adopted, through the gospel and through God giving his son to adopt us. And this is a visible way of making the gospel visible to us as well as the community around, and we want to participate in that. So, and do you want to share a couple more thoughts on the handout?
I'll just wrap back to the handout. So on this page, you can see opportunities to sign up for the most immediate next step, which is for anyone interested in even considering providing a home or joining a RAP group. There are orientation meetings on June 8th and 10th. The team has put so much time into thinking about this. We think it'll be a really rich time, so you can go ahead and RSVP here. Keep thinking about it. We'll have folks at the doors to help collect these, but also feel free to reach out in the coming weeks as you continue to think and pray about this.
We're going to invite up Abby Monahan, who not only is a talented singer, but also has a brother and a sister who are adopted, and she'll be singing as you have some time to just not only meditate on the music, but also consider, look at this one-pager here and consider where you want to sign up and where you think you want to take part. So thanks, Abby.
So one more night you cry. fall on here. The loneliness ends and a new life begins when love takes you in. And somewhere while you're sleeping, someone else is dreaming too, counting down the days until they hold you close and say, I love you. And like the rain that falls into the sea, in a moment what has been is lost in what will be. When love takes you in, and everything changes. A miracle starts with the beat of a heart, and this love will never let you go. There is nothing that could ever cause this love to lose its hold. When love takes you in, everything changes.